Deadly malnutrition soars among children in Africa's Lake Chad Basin amid a Boko Haram resurgence. Can vitamins and supplements help consumers in their quest for better health? And a closer look at an exhibit of cutting-edge artists from the continent. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Now, we begin this evening with the disturbing casualty numbers from Amnesty International. The human rights group says the Boko Haram terrorist group has killed 381 civilians in Nigeria and Cameroon since the beginning of April. Amnesty says the number of deaths since April 1st is more than double that for the preceding 5 months. The Nigerian military has repeatedly said Boko Haram has been defeated. However, in recent months, it has carried out a string of lethal suicide bombings and other high-profile attacks on towns and an oil exploration team. Boko Haram has killed 223 civilians in Nigeria since April. The extremist group forces women and girls to act as suicide bombers, which has driven the sharp rise in deaths in northeast Nigeria and northern Cameroon. Now, a major humanitarian crisis is brewing in Africa's Lake Chad Basin. According to the Norwegian Refugee Council, nearly 800,000 children under the age of 5 are severely malnourished in Nigeria, Niger, Cameroon and Chad. The Council Secretary General Jan Egeland warned on Tuesday the lack of sufficient humanitarian funding is putting the lives of young children at risk. Boko Haram's violence, which has spread from northern Nigeria to Niger, Cameroon and Chad, has forced millions to flee their homes and hampered their ability to cultivate their land. This has resulted in a devastating food crisis in the entire region. In Nigeria alone, 5.2 million people now remain food insecure, including 50,000 who are already living in famine-like conditions. Now, for more on the situation in the Lake Chad Basin, Jackie Okao, Norwegian Refugee Council's Protection and Advocacy Advisor in Nigeria, joins me via phone from Berlin in Germany. Ms. Okao, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you very much.
Now, we read that, in fact, most of the funds that were promised have been delivered for purposes of helping the people in that region. What is the problem then that we should have all these kind of numbers of children who are malnourished?
Yes, thank you very much again for having me on the show. As you rightly reported in the press statement that we just released, we're looking at about 800,000 children who are severely malnourished. And this is primarily as a result of the food crisis in the region. And the number of reasons that, or a number of factors that are contributing to this food crisis. But the most important to note is the current level of displacement. We have over 1.8 million people currently living in displacement in congested urban centers, in makeshift shelters, unable to, have a livelihood of their own. And these are entirely relying on the humanitarian assistance that is being given. And with the current level of programming in terms of finances, in terms of low levels of finances, we are unable to meet all the needs of those affected. And as a result, we're seeing the number of children affected by malnutrition increasingly going up.
Now, what is the best case scenario here, given the complexity of the situation in that part of Africa?
A best case scenario, I will look at it in two terms. I'll look at it as in terms of the short and immediate action that needs to be taken, and that is linked to the financing to enable humanitarian actors be able to reach out to the numbers of people affected. But the medium and long term is in terms of these affected should be able to have a livelihood of their own. With lasting peace, they should be able to go back home, get into the farming activities that they've been doing in the past couple of years, and that will, in the long run, reduce the number of people affected with the food crisis.
But quickly, the reality on the ground, with the numbers just increasing every other month, What hope is there that that can actually happen, that there will be a possibility of these people going back to their homes?
We're looking at the government of Nigeria pulling up their socks, getting up in arms, act to the situation. Look at all possible ways to ensure peace returns to this area, because without lasting peace, we're going to continue having, people flee for safety and end up in congested areas. So then, meaning they're not able to meet their daily livelihoods and will continue to be reliant on humanitarian assistance. So, for me, the most durable solution for these people affected is having lasting peace and them being able to have a livelihood of their own and not rely on humanitarian assistance.
Thank you. We hope things will improve there. Ms. Okao, thank you very much. Jackie Okao is a Norwegian Refugee Council's Protection and Advocacy Advisor in Nigeria. To East Africa, a Tanzanian court on Monday has sentenced 6 men to 20 years in jail each for chopping off the hand of an albino boy in the hope of selling it as a witchcraft charm. Now, according to local news, the men were charged with severing the left hand of a 12-year-old boy in February 2013 and running away with it. Some were later caught scouting for a prospective buyer. The United Nations estimates that at least 75 albinos were killed in Tanzania. That is between the year 2000 and 2015. The UN says that could represent only a fraction of the attacks, as most occur in secretive rituals in rural areas. 4 of the men were convicted on Friday of conspiring to murder and attempting to kill the boy, charges that carried separate jail terms. Well, now to the controversy surrounding the Kenyan presidential election. Voters will head to the polls to choose the country's next president for a second time in 3 months on October the 17th. Kenya's Electoral Commission set the date to comply with an order from the Kenya's Supreme Court, which nullified the result of last month's election due to what it called irregularities in the vote count, and ordered a new election to be held within 60 days. The Independent Election and Boundaries Commission asked the court to release a detailed ruling for its decision on Friday to annul the first election, so it can identify areas that require improvements in the management of the fresh election. Now, Kenyan opposition leader Raila Odinga said on Tuesday his coalition would not participate in the rerun of a presidential election on October 17th unless some of the Election Commission officials are removed and an audit of voting technology is carried out.
Maybe there is need for greater oversight, certain standards and strictness to ensure that whatever errors were committed last time are not repeated. But it will really be a tough task to ask brand new people to come into the secretariat and discharge a responsibility that they have no clue about.
Well, President Uhuru Kenyatta was declared the winner of that August 8th election by about 10% above his opponent Raila Odinga of the NASA coalition, who ended up actually contesting those results in the Supreme Court and demanded a new election. Now to Central Africa. Rwandan police on Monday arrested Diane Shima Rwigara. She's a leading critic of President Paul Kagame, charging her with forgery and tax evasion. Her mother and sister were also arrested on tax charges. Rwigara denies the allegations. Earlier this year, electoral authorities barred Rwigara from running in August's presidential election, which Kagame won overwhelmingly. They said she had not submitted enough supporter signatures, and some of the names she did send in belonged to dead people. Rwigara, a 35-year-old accountant, has repeatedly accused Kagame of still stifling dissent and criticized his Rwandan Patriotic Front near total grip on power. Now, Kagame won the election with 98.8% of the vote. Cameroonians in the English-speaking west of the country boarded up their shops, stayed home from work and boycotted the start of the school term on Monday. They're protesting what they say is their marginalization by the government. Shops, banks, market stalls and gas stations were all closed. Security forces were deployed on largely deserted streets to prevent defeat, or rather a repeat of violent protests last year, that galvanized opposition to President Paul Biya, in power for 35 years now, and provoked a crackdown in which dozens were arrested. Now, the internet was shut down for 3 months. The division in Cameroon is a legacy of World War I, when the League of Nations divided the former German colony of Cameroon in Central Africa between Allied French and British victors. Well, now, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, warned North Korea Monday that the United States does not have unlimited patience. Haley called on UN Security Council members to support new, robust sanctions against the rogue regime. VOA's Margaret Bashir reports from the UN.
North Korea conducted its 6th and largest nuclear test to date on Sunday, quickly drawing international condemnation. At the UN, Nikki Haley had a stern warning for dictator Kim Jong-un.
His abusive use of missiles and his nuclear threats show that he is begging for war. War is never something the United States wants. We don't want it now. But our country's patience is not unlimited. We will defend our allies and our territory.
Haley said the U.S. would circulate a new sanctions resolution to council members and expected to quickly bring it to a vote next Monday.
The time for half measures in the Security Council is over. The time has come to exhaust all of our diplomatic means before it's too late. We must now adopt the strongest possible measures.
The Council only just adopted its toughest sanctions yet against North Korea last month. China's UN envoy Liu Zheyi condemned North Korea's actions and called for dialogue.
The situation on the Korean peninsula is deteriorating constantly as we speak, falling into a vicious circle. The peninsula issue must be resolved peacefully. China will never allow chaos and war on the peninsula.
Diplomats are running out of sectors to target for sanctions. The international community says North Korea diverts income from several industries to maintain its illicit nuclear and ballistic missile programs. Margaret Bashir, VOA News, the United Nations.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook. So check us out and share our show with your friends also. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Now find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCorry. Coming up, a closer look at the health benefits of vitamins and supplements. Stay with us. Well, it's time now for a health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lina Amadou with news of a link between vitamin B and cancer. Lina.
That's right, Vincent. New research from Ohio State University says men who take vitamin B6 and B12 supplements daily over a long period of time are doubling the risk for lung cancer and tripling the risk if they smoked. The study, published in the Journal of Clinical Oncology, followed more than 77,000 participants aged 50 to 76 who took these specific B vitamins daily over a 10-year period. As individual sources rather than as multivitamins, vitamins B12 and B6 caused the most risk, with a 30% to 40% increased risk, respectively, for lung cancer in men after 6 years. After 10 years, the risk was nearly double. Men who smoked prior to beginning the study and took vitamin B supplements saw their risk increase triple. Now, conflicting headlines on the value of nutrients like omega-3 and vitamin D can create doubt among consumers who aren't sure how important or necessary it is to take supplements. Joining me in the studio for more on the subject is Karen Howard, Executive Director of the Organic and Natural Health Association. Karen, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you very much for having me.
So when we hear reports like this, it really makes you wonder, how important is it to take supplements?
So one of the things that I think came out of that study that people should focus on is that the one point in time that they measured those vitamin B levels is what they based the results of the study on. The key takeaway for that is, do you know what your vitamin levels are? And most people don't. It's become much more prevalent that physicians will take a measure of your vitamin D level and will report that back to you. And many people then just move on and walk through life with it. I believe she said that I had a low vitamin D level. Mm-hmm. So what happens is that we don't know if we're really deficient in all these nutrients. We aren't really certain how much we should take. And if we're not managing the information around what our levels change to be, we're really left in the dark with as little information as when we started.
So how do we find out our vitamins level, and how do we become better educated about this?
A couple of different ways to do that. We have a wonderful, just very dense site in terms of lots of information called nutrientpower.org, which will talk to you about the many nutrients that most people are very deficient in and the ways to be able to manage that deficiency. Mm-hmm. What we're most excited about right now is the work that we're doing to monitor vitamin D and omega-3 levels. I can take a test personally in the comfort of my own home without getting in the car and without the expense of a doctor's appointment, and very quickly get the results back and know what my omega-3 levels are and my vitamin D levels.
And this is specifically for those two. Why? Why are these two so important?
The vitamin 2 research that's been going on in this arena with our research partners, 7 years old, 12,000 people are engaged in that research, individuals like you and me, just every 6 months testing their levels. Mm-hmm. Adding on omega-3 to that is a logical next step for us to see the impact of a nutrient profile on healthcare outcomes. They work very closely together in the body. They are two of the most prevalent nutrients that people take on a daily basis, and yet many people quit taking them because they don't see the health outcomes right away from what it is they're doing.
So what are the most important things that consumers need to know when they are looking for vitamin supplement?
When you go to select your vitamins and your supplements, there are a few things you know, and this information is also at nutrientpower.org. One, pay attention to the labels. If you see claims that seem too good to be true, to cure disease, treat disease, put those right back on the shelf. That's against the law. The dietary supplement world is regulated. It's the most regulated of all foods. These companies adhere to manufacturing practices, and their labels are all required to be a certain way by law. So when you look at, much like you look at a box of cereal, the #1 ingredient on the label is what's in the capsule or the pill or the solution. So look at the labels, look at the claims, call customer care on the bottle and see if they can answer your questions about why I should take this particular product. See if they're responsive. Go to their websites. Look and see how transparent they are about where they get the ingredients for their products. Those are just a few tips.
Now, are there some telltale signs to know that perhaps you are vitamin D deficient or you need more omega-3? Let's say you don't have a test kit. What do you do?
So I think
or how do you increase
that? So people talk about increasing their nutrient load by foods. With vitamin D, that's very difficult to do. It's actually impossible to do. Okay. So to do that on your own, and you can basically walk around with an assumption that you are, since 40 to 70% of the world is vitamin D deficient. You need to be out in the sun if you're not on the equator, 20 minutes a day with the majority of your skin showing, and do that 2 to 3 times a week, or if you have dark skin pigmentation, 2 to 3 times that. So that's your issue with vitamin D. And with omega-3s, the recommendation is 2 servings a week, if you can do that, of great fish.
Okay, Karen Howard, thank you so much for joining us. And that was Karen Howard. She's Executive Director of the Organic and Natural Health Association. Now, here's a statistic for you to consider. The United Nations estimates that over 30% of the food that is produced every year never gets eaten. That's 1.3 billion metric tons of food, more than enough to feed the world's 700 million plus hungry people. Now, one enterprising Nigerian entrepreneur has built an app to help get some of that food to those who need it. Here is VOA's Kevin Enax.
The creator of the Chowberry app has a clear motivation for creating his new food-sharing application.
There was a phase in the family where my dad was temporarily ill and out of work, and I remember vividly during that time period, the challenge at home was access to a wholesome meal, a quality meal. We could go a day or two without having a quality meal.
He wants to try and make sure other kids don't have to go through what he went through.
This was something that affected me psychologically and also impacted on my academics. And I always said sometime in the future, I would resolve this problem. I would leverage my abilities and capacities to ensure that others don't go through what I went through.
Rather than ending up in landfills, food that has passed its best buy date is still safe to eat and fresh. The app allows store owners to upload information on the food they can't sell. Charities buy the food they need at a discounted price and deliver it to those who need it.
It's so difficult for me to get food to feed my family because I don't have work to do. So it was people's help that I managed to feed my children. But now things will be better for me.
The app is good for everyone because food stores make a small profit by selling food they would normally throw away.
The long-term goal is to have this platform evolve into a big data platform, and our value proposition is simple. Simply plug the waste that is going on the food value chain and redirect what would have been wasted to those that need it the most.
By the end of 2018, Ekpanimo says his app will feed 100,000 households. Kevin Enax, VOA News.
That's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter @LenorMoudou. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, thanks a lot, Lenore. I'll be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, a view of South Africa's apartheid through the eyes of artists. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Germain City, the host city of the 9th BRICS Summit, has nurtured many tech startups, including the digital beauty app Meitu. Meitu hopes to build a beauty ecosystem worldwide. Now installed on more than 1.1 billion unique devices, the app has already gone global, with its photo editing app sitting at the top of the Apple Store's top 8 non-gaming apps. In terms of downloads, now the app burst into mainstream popularity earlier this year, turning images of many celebrities into hand-drawn cartoons that includes Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. In addition to many of its features, the app's wide array of editing tools and filters allows users to put their best face forward on social media. Well, and finally, a new ride-hailing service is closing in on Uber. Taxify is active in just under 25 cities compared to Uber's nearly 600-city global presence. The Estonian-based startup allows passengers to pay marked-down fares and drivers to retain a bigger share of the profits. Taxify will take a 15% cut on rides booked through its online platform versus the 25% or so Uber charges in London. Taxify also says it will accept cash as well as electronic payment from riders. Unlike Uber, Taxify first staked out capitals and major cities in several Central and Eastern European countries. Over the past year, it has vaulted into several of Africa's biggest cities. And that is what is trending today. Now, today, Africa 54 continues to explore the work of contemporary African artists from the holdings of the Baltimore Museum of Art. VOA's Zoe Ludaki takes us on a tour.
The harsh political realities of apartheid are explored from different angles in the exhibition Shifting Views at the Baltimore Museum of Art. Gavin Yankees created the South African Coloring Book.
South African Coloring Book critiques that very book that people of color were obliged to carry in order to move about the land, to be the migrants within their own nation. We have a woman who's laboring to clean an entrance that she will never be able to use because it's for whites only, for ladies.
David Goldblood is considered one of the best photographers working in the continent today. He was commissioned by the South African mining company, Anglo-American, to document for their shareholders the life of migrant workers in Soweto. Pictured is Margaret Mikana, who later became a famous singer known as Lady Africa. We move to the Panopticon, a piece by Robin Rhodes that brings visitors back to the galleries for multiple viewings. Panopticon is an architectural design used for prisons or asylums, with a central guard tower and cells all around it. It is often used as a metaphor for surveillance.
He's taken that ability to see 24/7 and he owns it. This is a very political work. The calipers that are affixed to the eyes, the ability to see, are reminiscent of those calipers that were used to measure the features of human beings and place them in the same grids that we see in other artworks.
The show concludes with Diane Victor's smoke drawings. She uses the carbon deposits of the flame of a candle on paper to create elusive markings that after a while disappear.
Either she represented prisoners or she represented children who went missing. And so the work Frailty and Failing both represents the most frail individuals in our world and our own social failing to concern ourselves with them once they disappear from our view.
As I was standing in the middle of the show, I realized that we, the audience, are like the guards on the Panopticon, surveying the human drama of our times.
This is what they represent.
Zoe Ludaki, VOA News, Baltimore.
And that's our show. Thanks. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. An alley is a narrow path between or behind buildings.
Up one's alley.
Does this expression have to do with city streets?
Jonathan, do you have any friends who teach singing?
Hello. I am a singer.
You are? Oh, awesome. Do you